This video was sponsored by Propnight. Well, they didn't actually give me any money, but I am friends with someone who works for the gaming company. They're awesome, and they said it would be awesome if I made a guide for the game. So, here I am. I've been playing Propnight a lot these past few weeks, and as someone who used to compete semi-professionally in Dead by Daylight cash cups and tournaments, I am no stranger to the asymmetric survival horror genre. In this video, I will tell you everything important I know about Propnight that I think can help any player, new or experienced, improve their skills as both survivor and or killer. There are timestamps if you want to skip to specific sections, but I give general tips throughout. First off, I will briefly explain the basics of Propnight and what this game is about. Since many of you may already know this stuff, I will keep it brief. As of me making this video, there are 5 survivors and 5 killers that you can play, and 5 maps that you can play on. Each survivor starts with a different item. Chris starts with an energy drink, which makes you run fast and or repair prop machines a bit faster for a decent period of time. Isaac starts with a camera that lets you stun the killer, and this will also make the killer drop a survivor if they are carrying one. Mabel starts with a book that allows her to get a speed boost and go invisible for a few seconds. And lastly, Kate and Tyga start with medkits that heal the player when using one. All survivors can transform into props to aim at with left click and back into human form with right click by default, and all keybinds can be changed in your control settings. Smaller props are easier to control and lower your HP to where the killer can down you easier, and the large props, while harder to control, are just as fast and give you more HP for face-to-face killer interactions. As a prop, you can bounce on the killer's head to stun them, double jump for less predictable movement, and you can wall bounce by aiming away from a wall, obstacle, or person and pressing spacebar when you make contact with the wall. You need to have your props back touching the obstacle or wall you are bouncing off of, and there is no cooldown between the time you can wall bounce, so if you can get good at it, it can help you tremendously, especially on maps that have a lot of walls like on House. In match, you will need to repair 5 out of 7 prop machines that spawn on the map by interacting with them. This will power 2 exit gates, and as long as you interact and open 1 exit gate and even just a single survivor escapes, then the survivor wins. The killer will try to stop you from doing this, and each of the 5 killers have powerful abilities and movement capabilities. As well as this, there is a timer that the survivors need to keep an eye on. The timer only increases when survivors repair prop machines, rescue survivors, or the survivors rescue themselves. If the killer kills all 4 survivors or the timer runs out, then the killer wins. Pretty simple. Now, before I continue, a quick disclaimer. You should try to have fun in every game you play. The tips I will list in this video are intended for those that want to improve their Propnight skills and knowledge. There is no ranked system or MMR system in Propnight as far as I know, so whether you win or not only matters if you want cosmetics faster. There is talks of a ranked system being implemented soon, so this video can help prepare a player for that, but as of right now, there is no reason to get sweaty unless you really love cosmetics or you just find joy in winning like I do. Okay, now with the intro out of the way, let's get into teaching you how to actually be good at this game, so you can collect in-game cosmetics faster through in-game coins you get by winning your matches because, as you may know, you get 0 coins for losing. First off, I will explain the killers, because through experience I found that understanding how the killers work and how to go against them is the best advice one can give for Propnight. If you are a survivor main, try playing killer a few times, you will learn a lot. Without wasting any more time, I'm going to start with the Banshee. This killer can fly fast for almost 4 seconds, and this power recharges fully in 18 seconds or so. She can fly vertically and glide by holding space, so she can move from floor to floor on layered maps with ease, and fly above the cornfield on the farm to see nearly all 4 corners of the map using this ability. She can curse prop machines with her Q ability for 90 seconds as well. This curse makes skill checks on the machine much faster and more frequent, which can be difficult for some who aren't used to them. And missed skill checks will regress the prop machine and give a loud noise notification alerting the killer that someone is repairing that machine. If you do get good at repairing the faster skill checks though, getting on them can get you more coins since you'll get more skill checks, so keep that in mind. Lastly, Banshee can unleash a scream attack that will reveal and damage all survivors in a few meter radius around her with a cooldown of 30 seconds. Banshee's scream cannot go through large objects or walls, but it is safer not to hide in an obvious spot where you think she may scream. When playing as Banshee, you should try to scream in spots where you think the survivors may be hiding, rather than using the scream in a chase, as it does very little damage. It can be used to finish off a low HP survivor though, so do be wary if you find yourself on the receiving end. My best tips for facing this killer is to repair prop machines in safe sightlines, forcing her to get closer to see if you are actually on one. And while hiding can still be fine considering her Scream anti-hiding skill has a 30-second cooldown, since she can only cover a lot of distance for 4 seconds every 22 seconds or so, running from her is not a bad strategy. Survivors can sprint for a short period of time when in human form, and while Banshee will catch up to you with the hunt ability which all killers possess, which makes killers faster the longer they chase a survivor, you can run from this killer a bit better than some of the other killers in the game. Doors are a great resource against a Banshee and Akasha killer, as they have little counterplay for them besides superior mind games. You can try to swing and hit a door, for example, if you know a survivor will try to stun you with one. Sometimes it is faster to just swing into the door and commit, as you will almost always break the door, but you will be stunned as well. This deletes the risk of getting stunned and the door staying there to be used later, as doors in Propnight have 2 health states, full HP and weakened. Stunning the killer or hitting the door as the killer when closed takes away 1 health state, so getting rid of both at once is a good idea if you can manage it. As a Banshee killer, you should be aware of the risk of committing too much to a chase, especially since door mind games favor the survivor since they are in control of the door. A good thing to do is to try to bait the doors out early so your movement and chases are less interrupted later. Face tanking them do give the survivors a few coins for items, but if you can get rid of the doors and win in the long run, then it doesn't matter how many coins they had. Another tip for Banshee is that she is strong in the late game since she can find survivors with her Scream, so keeping an eye on generators more in the center of maps early on can pay off later since survivors will be pushed into tighter areas. Don't just leave the side prop machines though, as any potential 3 prop machines being close together in the endgame is ideal for the killer, and there are a lot of ways to do this in Propnight as the maps are not super large. Even with the patch released a few days ago, making gens safer and adding a room or 2 here and there on certain maps, killers who are mindful of keeping gen pressure high in the center of the map early on tend to not regret it. Next up, I'm going to talk about Akasha, since she and the Banshee have a lot in common in terms of playstyle. Akasha is also very strong in the late game, as her eye can pretty much cancel out the possibility of survivors going to a certain prop machine without giving away their position guaranteed. Akasha's Q ability leaves an eye that tracks survivors in movement within a few meter radius around it. This eye has a 40-second cooldown and a 30-second uptime. While it can only be in one place at a time, leaving it at one prop machine in the endgame while you patrol the 2 machines closer together is a strong strategy. If the survivors manage to repair 4 prop machines, they will be in store for a tough final machine against Akasha. Akasha also has 2 movement abilities, one in the form of a 5-second cooldown dash attack, which deals damage to all survivors directly in front of her within about 3 meters or so, and when spammed only makes her about 5 to 10% slower than just normally walking. And the other in the form of a 25-second cooldown phase walk, which makes her move very fast for 5 whole seconds. The weakness of this phase walk though is that you cannot cancel it unless stunned, and you cannot attack while in this state, so you should use it only when closing distance or moving in between high priority areas. You should use her dash attack often when you get close to survivors, as it is easy to aim, has a short cooldown, and has good range. But you should also make sure to act on your eye's information, as it is incredibly valuable. Akasha shares a same weakness with Banshee though, as she has no counter to doors except for mind games. Survivors should try to take advantage of this by getting Akasha killers to chase them more and not be afraid of being chased, and Akasha killers should, like Banshee, be wary not to commit too much to certain chases. If the survivor is far away and in the open, phasing to catch up is a valid strategy, but when phasing, you leave yourself vulnerable to being stunned because you can't attack a survivor who's trying to jump on your head and they can still stun you while phasing, and you cannot hit a door, so if they close a door, you won't be able to break it until your 5-second phase is up, and phasing through a doorway just isn't a good idea, period, because again, you can't hit the door. And on the flip side, as a survivor against Akasha, keep in mind that she is stuck in her phase for 5 seconds when she uses it, so if she uses it and she is close to you, you can try to stun her or get to a door as fast as possible. You can also bait Akasha's eye by triggering it and then hiding nearby or just completely leaving the room. This will make the killer think you are in the area around her eye when you might not be. Next up, I am moving to the fluffy yet terrifying Igor. This killer is all offense and is great in chases. His chainsaw dash lasts 5 seconds if you fully use it, and it takes 10 seconds for it to fully come back. As long as you don't fully use the chainsaw though, you'll be able to use it over and over again without ever needing to wait for a cooldown. If the full duration is used, you will have to wait for it to completely recharge, so it is better to make sure it never hits 0. This chainsaw one-shots doors, so this killer can dash through doors freely. A survivor that knows Igor is coming through a door with his chainsaw's best bet is getting high and out of reach to dodge his chainsaw, and then rerun out of the door or to try to stun him right as he goes through the door, but you will risk getting hit in the process. A great tip for Igor players is to increase your sensitivity while on the killer. Your chainsaw turns slow, but on high sensitivity it is incredibly easy to turn, and this makes him devastating to escape from in chases. Igor also has grenades with a 3-second cooldown that have a high blast radius. You should throw these often in areas you think survivors are, but Igor is super good in chases, not at finding survivors. You shouldn't spend too much time looking for a survivor that's hiding. You should spend more time going to prop machines and hunting them. For survivors, hiding from Igor when you think he may be coming is not the worst idea, but you should hide higher up rather than on the floor. If he knows to expect that, then you should try to change into large props and stun him, as doors won't save you very well against a skilled Igor player. Igor's arguably most fun part of his kit is his Q. This skill has a 75-second cooldown, but it makes his terror radius completely silent, so he becomes a stealth killer for 10 seconds with only a 65-second downtime. You should use this when you want to try to get the jump on someone on a prop machine. As a survivor, hiding during this is not the worst idea unless you are in a good spot, like next to a convenient door, or have great sightlines. Igor's nades not slowing him down while throwing them in a chase on top of his super useful chainsaw that he can use pretty much constantly, and his 10 seconds of being a stealth killer every 75 seconds makes him a very strong killer for chasing and hunting survivors. Igor does have a weakness against slow jars that survivors can throw though. He is the only killer in the game without an ability to alter his physical shape to help counter slow jars. His prop machine pressure and lack of ability finding survivors good at hiding are other weaknesses as well, but I would say his strengths outweigh those, and he can still throw his nades in general areas where he thinks survivors may be hiding. As a survivor, you should use every item at your disposal properly against Igor. Cameras and hide, slow jar and escape, stun jar and hide, energy drink and run, book and run, etc. This is because it is nearly impossible to escape a chase without an item against an Igor who is playing perfectly. His kit has weaknesses, but he is strong in a chase if he knows what he is doing. If there is ever a killer to go for prop stuns on and to use items on, it is this killer, and the Imposter killer that I will talk about next. Speaking of the Imposter, it is time for the good old-fashioned Among Us reference character. The Among Us killer's main resource is movement speed and stealth. The Imposter can transform into props and into survivors as a means of catching you off guard. You can tell if the Imposter is pretending to be your teammate if you aim at the suspicious object or person and there is no name above their head. Sometimes aiming at a small prop or person far away can be difficult though, so usually it is better to always assume the killer is your teammate approaching, especially if they are in human form. The Imposter also has a Q ability, which regresses all generators by a small amount, and the killer can see red auras of all prop machines being actively worked on when he presses this Q ability. This skill has a 60-second cooldown though, so it isn't as oppressive as it used to be when the CD was only 30 seconds. As the Imposter killer, it is better to stay disguised, as it removes your terror radius and you can sprint as survivors do. Your sprint is about as fast as survivors sprint during the time, despite the speed nerf. And although your stamina is lower than a survivor's, you can transform into a prop while you get your stamina back. This can help you close the distance on a survivor, and it will help you build up your hunt passive, which again will make you faster the longer you are in a chase. A good Imposter killer who uses this speed tactic is very hard to escape from. Doors are very helpful at slowing this killer down, but they won't do much more than that against a strong Imposter player. That is because as an Imposter killer, you should transform into a small prop so you can jump through or over the doors so that you do not have to wait and break them. On the school and house map, for example, you could just jump through the windows of the doors at any time. This forces the survivor to time their door closing well or to run away, which can often be a good strategy. Sometimes making the killer think you are going for a door stun usually gives you a second or two to make some distance. On a map with sharp turns or small windows to escape, this time is sometimes all you need. While in a chase against killers without stealth finding abilities such as the Imposter, after a sharp turn, hiding off the ground high up or even hiding briefly and doubling back behind the killer out of their line of sight sight is always a great option. While there is a timer that you need to be aware of, hiding for a few seconds doesn't hurt, and the longer a killer spends looking for you, the more time you are buying for your team. The imposter killer in particular has zero means of finding you when you are hiding anymore. The killer used to be able to tell if a survivor was hiding or not by hovering over the prop to see if he could turn into it or not, but he can no longer do that. And the bug which would allow you to see different colorations of props depending on if they were survivor or not when playing on low graphics was also patched out. If you hide, you will be completely hidden, forcing the imposter to waste time hitting things manually or to move on. The last thing the imposter can do is move faster while carrying survivors. This will make it harder for survivors to jump on your head to stun you while carrying their teammates to a chair. You can also try to dodge the survivors regardless of this, but usually dropping the survivor you're carrying on the floor and attacking the person trying to stun you and hooking that guy instead is better to do anyways. Counter techniques against the imposter killer include, but are not limited to, good hiding, never trusting your teammates and just getting off the generator until you can confirm it's your teammate, timing doors, and stunning the killer by jumping on his head. All you need to do is get the hitbox of an item to make contact with the killer's head. As the killer, you can jump and dodge out of the way while still swinging at the survivors as an attempt to counter this, but the hitboxes of props are pretty large. Therefore, if they, the survivors, want to stun you and are good at it, they usually will. So make sure that you at least take a hit with them as a memento. Lastly, for killers, I will talk about the Granny. This killer is very strong despite her recent nerf, as the knife she leaves behind is a powerful source of information, and it can sometimes be impossible to avoid. There are still plenty of ways to play around this killer though. The Granny used to be able to have 2 knives out at a time, but now she can only leave 1, and this was a great change as 2 knives in a good spot meant 30 damage you can't avoid. A good way to try to dodge the knives is to get very close to trigger the knife to lock onto you, and then to get behind an obstacle. As a killer, to counter this, you should leave the knife out in the open from obstacles so that the survivor cannot avoid it. As a survivor in that scenario, the best thing to do is to transform into a tanky prop nearby quickly to tank the hit with that and then heal the damage later, or to wait for the game's passive healing to kick in. Remember, you can't passive heal up to max HP though, it stops around 70. The knife that the Granny leaves lasts for 50 seconds and has a cooldown of 15 seconds. The Granny also has an E ability that allows her to move at increased speed for 5 seconds, and the cooldown is 25 seconds. Unlike Akasha's speed skill though, the Granny is invisible during this phase transition, and she can interrupt the state with an attack at any time. Because of this, you should use this in a chase to catch survivors and to hit them when you get close. When the knife the Granny leaves behind is triggered, the Granny will notice as the red knife will disappear from her screen if she is aiming in the direction of it. As a killer, you should try to practice keeping an eye on your knives, because when they disappear from your screen, you know that they've went off. As a killer, these knives should be used as not only applying pressure, but also as information gathering. You should also get into a habit of placing a knife next to the survivors you place in a chair, as there will be a high chance the survivor rescuing that person will get hit by it if it is placed in the open. You should also get used to placing a knife near a door or a small loop of survivors trying to kite you around. As a survivor, a big thing to watch out for when playing against a Granny is that she will throw knives at you when you're in a chase. These knives move in a straight line, unless you're in a human form. As a human, these knives will lock onto you, and you will almost always get hit unless you're zigzagging sharply and quickly. Since that slows you down a lot, I would only recommend that if you drank an energy drink item, and even so, it's still risky. Without that item on though, you should transform into a small prop so that her knives do not lock onto you in a chase. When Granny gets close to you with her E, you can transform into a tankier prop to tank the hit or try to stun her, and then back into yourself to sprint ahead again to make distance. You can also just transform back into yourself and tank the hit and sprint. But there are some props on the map that give you more than 100 HP, so I would recommend using those if you get the chance. Since Granny's knives only lock onto humans, you should stay transformed as a prop as much as you can while in a chase against her. Overall, the best ways to counter a Granny is having a way to heal yourself, turning into large props when having to tank a slice, turning into a small prop when she is chasing you and throwing knives at you, and playing out of line of sight of the Granny when you are fixing a prop machine to avoid hits from knives from far away. As a Granny killer, you should just be aware of survivors taking these countermeasures against you and just just let them do that. You should focus on applying gen pressure and catching up to them with your E in a chase, as it's very hard for them to escape that. Despite survivor counterplay, with your knives and speed, downing survivor is not going to be a problem overall. Finding a survivor when they're hiding can be a problem though, but you can just leave a knife in a general area where you think that survivor will pass by if they're hiding in the area, or will travel through on their way to like a nearby prop machine. Doors as well can be sometimes a problem for this killer, but you can throw knives through the doors very quickly by doing a little jump and aiming at the survivor, and this makes the survivor's lives harder. If a granny is doing this though, as a survivor, it's better to keep the door open and to bait her knives out, as it is easy to dodge by hugging the wall next to the door. When she crosses the door, you should try to stun her, then reset the door's position so you can come back and try to stun her again with that same door later. To counter this, you as the killer again can just place a hovering knife with your Q at the door so that the survivor, no matter what they do, will take some damage as they run away from you. Alright, so the killer section was very long, but that is because there was 5 sections. For survivors, there is only one large section, so let's jump right into it. As a survivor, your main objective is fixing prop machines, of course, but depending on what killer you are against, you will often need some specific items for your game to go smoothly. Some examples are, if you're facing a granny, you will want a medkit, and if you're facing a bunny, slowing jars, stun jars, and cameras are super useful. To help you get these items, you need coins. Coins are spread around the map, and gathering a coin or two while scoping out where the killer and your fellow survivors are, if you're playing solo after finishing a prop machine, is often a great idea. If you are chased off a gen and manage to lose the killer, rather than instantly going back on another gen, grabbing a coin or two is also not a bad idea. You will spend these coins at chests around the map. If your teammate did happen to die, unfortunately, you can go over to their body and grab all their coins that they left behind and any items as well. You will spend these coins at chests around the map, and certain items can help you tremendously. The golden medkit, which heals you instantly and has 10 charges, is amazing. The golden energy drink that gives you a big speed boost for 20 seconds with a 2-minute cooldown is also amazing. The golden camera, which will only have its cooldown go down if you actually stun the killer, is nice as well, so if you miss the camera shot you can try again, for example. These items are absolutely amazing. There are a lot of insane items that you can get that can make the killer's life a lot harder. You can also give items to your teammate by holding G and hovering over the item you want to drop. If your teammate is bleeding and you are full HP and you have 2 healing items, tossing them a medkit is motivating and helpful, especially with random people you don't know. By the same logic, if you queue up with your friend and want to play Kate but you really like the camera, you can ask them to play Isaac and you two can trade items at the start. This will also surprise the killer and he'll be like, wait, why did Kate have a camera? The game's only been on for like 20 seconds. On that same note, if you queue with a friend who is really good at kiting the killer, giving them your item straight up at the start, or if you are that friend that's really good, asking your friend for their own item is cool as well. Regardless though, coins respawn super fast on the map. You will get items fast if that is your objective. You do also get plenty of coins by repairing prop machines and saving your teammates from the chair after the killer catches them. But getting a single coin around the map gives you 300 coins without much effort, and that is a good amount considering it only takes 1,000 coins for a chance at a game-changing golden item. It's not always an ideal thing to do, and I personally have never done this, but having a teammate who is on their last chair, which is equivalent to last hook in Dead by Daylight, dedicated to grabbing coins and getting items passively is not too bad for a pre-built group strategy. Talking with your teammates and making callouts also can just help in general. The killer can heal the callouts though, and I am not sure if you can change that in game somehow, but you can just throw in fake callouts here and there to keep the killer guessing. Another super important survivor tip is keeping an eye on prop machines that are being done. If you see 3 prop machines nearby each other, like near Red Barn on Farm for example, doing the machine in the middle of the 3 is a wonderful idea and can potentially be the difference between winning and losing. If the killer realizes this and pressures you off, you can still do a prop machine on the side of the 3-gen to at least make it a 2-gen with an isolated gen far away. If you are in a 3-gen against a semi-competent killer, there is often nothing you can do unless the killer makes a fatal mistake and commits too much to a losable chase or to one side of the 3-gen. As a killer, getting tunnel vision is sometimes okay if it is to kill off a vulnerable survivor, or if you think you can get them to waste a few doors, for example. As a survivor, keep in mind that a killer may be trying to do this, and to communicate this to your teammates. Saying a quick, "The killer is chasing me," or "I had to use a few doors upstairs," can help save them time and trouble later, or lets them know that they can work on prop machines while the killer is busy with you. If the killer gets psyched out by you saying this and leaves you, well, you got away from the killer for free. Now that I mentioned tunneling though, I'm going to segue into saying that it is okay if the killer kills off one of your teammates or even yourself early. Remember, in Propnight, all you need as a survivor is for one of you to escape. If the killer spent a lot of time tunneling your teammate, use that time to fix prop machines, ideally high value prop machines in the middle of the map or in the middle of 3 gens. In Propnight as a survivor, you will sometimes find yourself in a 1v1 scenario. In this situation, you have incredibly fast prop machine repairing speed. But obviously, the maps in the game are not infinitely large, so it will sometimes often still seem impossible. The best strategy for winning as the last survivor is not working only on one prop machine, especially if you only need to finish one more. You may not have a lot of time to fix the machines, but if you get one machine to 15% for example, and then quickly leave in the direction the killer went the last time you saw them, they will start looking for you around that 15% generator you were previously on. During that time, you can often quickly finish the other prop machine. If not, you can also get that other prop machine up to about 15-20% or so, and then move to a different one to keep the killer guessing. Sometimes that isn't necessary, as the killer might look around thoroughly around each generator, but still it's a good thought. For exit gates, it is even easier, as you can just get on the gate a little at a time, as the killer cannot track the progress of the exit gate. You can get the gate to 25% and then get off it, then get it to 50% and off it again. To be safer, you can do it in even shorter bursts. If the killer is smart, they will double back on both doors every now and then, expecting you to use this strategy though, but most won't. You are in a 1v1 situation regardless though, where the killer killed 3 of your teammates, so don't expect to win this every time. But you shouldn't give up as the last survivor. You still have plenty of means to win. If anything, a good survivor can even argue that their random teammates sometimes do more harm than good. But don't be that guy or gal. Everyone plays games at their own pace and shouldn't be expected to play one way or another. All you can do is play your game as good as you can, and you will find good results by doing so. Next, I mentioned a few hiding tips earlier in the killer section, but in general, hiding is a huge part of Propnight, as even killers with the means of finding good survivors have their limitations and cooldowns. Hiding up high is something I can almost always recommend, but also hiding in an area with smaller props is a good idea. An example is a book on a bookshelf, a cabbage next to other cabbages, etc. Do keep in mind, though, that some killers will know how many trash bags are in a certain corner, or how many bears there are in a certain room. The less conspicuous you are, the better. Creative hiding and hiding up high is my best advice for hiding. But believe it or not, you can also just hide as a big prop out in the open, and sometimes the killer won't notice or expect it. If they do find you, well, they will probably get stunned and you won't take much damage. Overall though, hiding is strong, not just because you stay out of a chase, but because many killers won't even look for you. Take advantage of this and stay hidden near the prop machine or machines you want to work on. Getting even just a little progress done every once in a while can help save your team massively, especially if you have a very clever hiding spot nearby that you keep going back to. And focusing on this same prop machine can be especially useful if the prop machine is in the middle of a 3-gen, as the killer might keep coming back and checking for you. Also, hiding as strangely shaped props such as the rubber chicken, the globe, or the guitar can allow you to shimmy up walls, and this can help you get to higher spots for short periods of time. This will probably be patched out in the future, but maybe not, you never know. This can allow you to juke out the killer in the school's gymnasium, for example, on the high walls. The Imposter killer and Akasha can have trouble hitting props that are out of reach, and again, in general, hiding higher up is better as killers tend to check there less. A tip for killers on that note would be to check higher up sometimes. You never know what you might find. Lastly, on hiding, I will again say that disappearing behind a blind corner in a chase is a very good strategy. The killer's perspective while hunting is first person, so if you're right behind them, they won't see you. You can use this to your advantage. If their headphones are turned up high, they may hear you though, so if you notice this, you can adjust your in-game strategy against that particular killer by hiding more or kiting more and not mixing in double backs, going downstairs, and the like. Because remember, keeping distance from a killer long enough for you to find a door or a sharp corner where you can like turn into a barrel or a couch and stun the killer as they go through your door is not very difficult on most maps and can be very effective strategies at prolonging the chase and or escaping the killer. And doors are still your safest bet unless you're against Igor, where that stunning strategy I just mentioned would be more helpful. Lastly, for survivor tips, I will talk about mechanics for when you turn into props. Obviously hiding is important, but knowing when not to hide is even more important, so you should get more comfortable with moving around the map. As a survivor, sprinting is your fastest way of moving, except for wall bouncing. So you should be sprinting as much as you can, and then when you are out of stamina, that's when you're moving around as a prop. And as a prop, you can reposition yourself by pressing Shift by default. This will make the prop you have turned into stand up straight, and you can turn your field of view by holding Shift and turning your camera around if you want to position it better. This mainly helps for hiding purposes. A picture frame facing in the opposite direction from normal is easier to spot than a picture frame facing out like it normally would. For wall bouncing, I covered it briefly earlier, but while in a chase you can jump up to a wall and then launch yourself either forward for distance or even back right over the killer's head to make them have to turn around or even potentially lose them if they weren't paying attention. Regardless, you will build distance. The reason movement is so important though is that 9 times out of 10 you can't win by just hiding and repairing prop machines. For example, sometimes the killer will just plain and simply get the jump on you no matter how prepared you think you are. As well as this, if you know the killer will kill your teammate or your teammate will go to second stage on the chair, you many times will need to go help save them yourself if your other teammates are occupied or too scared or whatever. When sitting in the chair for the first time in a match, your timer will be at 120 seconds, and if your timer gets to 59 seconds before you're saved, then the next time you're hooked, you're dead. It is equivalent to not getting saved by your teammate before halfway in Dead by Daylight. Also, sorry for often comparing the game to DBD, it's just the best reference that I have to help save me time explaining some things. I also call prop machines generators sometimes, sorry about that. But because I just mentioned you want to save your teammate before it hits 60 seconds, because if they die the next time they hooked, well, you're down a teammate, and then in general, it will become harder to win. So getting off your gen when their timer is around 80 seconds or so usually suffices if you know nobody else is going for them. If the killer is hard camping them, a well-timed stun with either a camera, stun jar, or as a prop can give you just enough time to save them and escape as long as you have high health when you go for the rescue. The game has anti-camping mechanics enabled, so if you rescue a survivor from a hook, they can take at least one hit. So even though a survivor has 20 HP when they get rescued, if the survivor hits them, they will go down to 1 HP, so they can take 2 hits. Think of it like a mini borrowed time. This brave saving tactic against a camper does take practice though, so if you go in unprepared against a camper, you will only make matters worse. If you think that this will happen in your case, just let the killer camp. Survivors can repair 3 generators over the course of 2 minutes a killer is camping a chair, and if the killer is too close to the chair, the countdown for the survivor's demise is paused anyway, due to, again, anti-camping mechanics in Propnight. Killers will camp, yes, but as long as one survivor escapes, then all that camping was for nothing. XP gives nothing at the moment in Propnight, so survivors don't care too much about going for saves as long as they win anyways. I don't recommend camping as a killer as it usually doesn't pay off, but if you as a survivor just blindly throw yourselves at a camping killer, the killer will be even more obligated to camp his catch, and if he now has 2 or 3 bodies to camp, you better believe they will. The last tip I will give for survivors is something that seems like a no-brainer, but believe it or not, intentionally pissing off the killer by insulting them.
You're really gonna f***ing tunnel me, you stupid
is not something that you should do, period, as it's very immature and rude. I have been in scenarios against killers that weren't planning on killing everyone and they were really nice, that turned tryhard and absolutely mopped the floor with us because someone called them a bad name. If you truly care about getting prop coins as fast as possible for those prop boxes, for those cosmetics, then getting the killer mad is not a good strategy. If you know you are going to win, then you may see no problem with being a donkey hole to the killer, or to the 4 survivors if you're the killer. But remember that you are all just human beings playing the same game and are a part of the same cool gaming community. Play your game and play it the way you want, sure, but insulting others is just kind of a douche move, and often just does more harm than good. And you could also just get reported for bad language and then your account will get banned, and that's not what you want. Then you'll lose all your skins. So I don't see why you would ever do that. If your reasoning is you're blowing off steam after a rough day, well, I promise you there are better ways to do that. You're hard coping if you think that's a valid excuse. But anyways, enough of that. With that, I'm going to wrap up. I was very happy to make this video to help support Mytona, my friend's gaming company, and the publisher of Propnight, as this game is something they have poured a lot of heart into, and I frankly think that they're doing an amazing job with all the patches and updates recently. With that said though, I will be ending this video. As of me making this video right now, the Minecraft mod pack RLCraft is releasing its new 2.9 version publicly. I will be heavily consumed by that for the next few months, so I am very happy that I got to release this non-related RLCraft video right before that happened. Thank you for supporting the channel, it means a lot to me, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.